Hi, everybody, and welcome to this short spotlight on resilience, which I've called the way of the Stoic. So I think most people are finding this particular lockdown and these particular times very stressful. And that is partly driven by increased uncertainty, increased unpredictability, and a sense that we are not in control of things to the extent that we are normally used to being in control. So that raises the question for us as to how we might think about increasing our resilience in facing into the current COVID situation. And what I want to look at is an old philosophy, an ancient philosophy that comes from ancient Greece and Rome called Stoicism. And Stoicism was very influential in its time, and it actually has been very influential over the past 2,000 years and has generated a great deal of interest even today. So Stoicism was a practical philosophy developed in ancient Greece and Rome, and it was really concerned with how to live a happy and meaningful life based on the development of one's character and also a sense of kindness to others. It's one of the foundations for positive psychology, which is one of the reasons that we're interested in it. Here are three of the great writers of Stoicism. There are a number of others: Seneca, Epictetus, particularly important, and then the last of the Roman emperors, Marcus Aurelius, whose book Meditations is still very widely read. So I want to focus in on one key idea from the Stoics, and that's called the dichotomy of control. And this is Epictetus, who puts it best, I think. He says, and this is written 2,000 years ago, he says, "The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals, not under my control, and which have to do with the choices that I actually control." He says, "Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself, to the choices that are my own." And Epictetus knew a lot about this. He was born a slave, was a slave until he was 30 years of age. As a child, his first master broke his leg to show him that he could. And Epictetus walked with a limp for the rest of his life. When he won his freedom at the age of 30, he set up one of the great schools of philosophy, first in Rome and then subsequently in northern Greece. So the key idea here is, how do we distinguish between the things we can control and those over which we have no control? Now, in modern times, that theme has been taken up by people like Stephen Covey, and it's one of the key ideas that underpins the 7 habits of highly effective people. And the way Covey used to talk about this was as follows: that if you think of all of your concerns, your circle of concerns, all of the things that are worries or challenges or problems for you, some of those concerns you will have influence or control over. So you can separate out, as shown here in 2 different circles, the concerns that you don't have control over and the concerns over which you have some control or influence. And the idea here is that a proactive focus, a sort of a growth mindset focus, we focus in on that circle of influence. We focus on the things that we have control over, and we don't worry too much about the things that we have no control over. A reactive focus, on the other hand, which would be associated with a fixed mindset, very much focuses on those concerns over which we actually have no control. So you can see here that the Stoic philosophy, some of these ideas in Stoicism, have come down to us and emerge again in all kinds of interesting ways. The wonderful Viktor Frankl, whose book Man's Search for Meaning still sells hundreds of thousands of copies, who wrote about his experience in the concentration camps during the war. One of the things that Frankl said was that when we are no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. And Frankl acknowledged the influence of Stoic philosophy on his thinking, as did Aaron Beck, for example. Cognitive behavior therapy is underpinned by Stoicism. Benjamin Franklin recognized the importance of Stoicism, and on it goes. So in terms of practical applications, I think the things we can do is to try to distinguish between the things we can control or influence and those that we can't, to focus on the things we can control, particularly in the current time, even if they're only small things. As an experiment, for 30 days, try to just work within your circle of influence or control. If we make commitments, we have the control of sticking to them. The idea to be part of the solution, not the problem. And then when we get it wrong and we make a mistake, adopt a growth mindset. Admit the mistake, correct it, learn from it, and move on. And then try to maintain a sense of equanimity in the face of those things that you can't control. If all of this sounds a bit familiar, well, it comes out again in, for example, the serenity prayer that's used by Alcoholics Anonymous, probably quite relevant for some of us. The serenity prayer says, "Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." So essentially, that's the idea of the Stoics. I've given you on this, and you'll have these slides, some further resources, including that fantastic website there, The Daily Stoic. And to sum up in a nutshell, what we're saying here in terms of resilience, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.